Crystal chandeliers hummed under the towering ceilings of the St. Regis Ballroom, casting a golden light over 300 of Manhattan's wealthiest corporate elite. I sat at table 1, the head VIP table, swirling a glass of ice water. As Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Vance Avery Global, this seat belonged to me. Then came the clinking of high heels against polished marble. "Get up, Alex," Serena said. Her voice cut through the ambient jazz music like broken glass. I didn't flinch. I kept my eyes on my glass, watching a single ice cube spin before looking up at my wife. Serena wore a backless emerald dress, her chin tilted high in calculated condescension. Standing half a step behind her was Julian Ross, wearing a velvet tuxedo that looked far too expensive for a man with zero income. "Excuse me?" I asked, keeping my tone dead flat. "You heard me," Serena stated, loudly enough for the surrounding tables to turn their heads. "Move to table 12 near the back. Julian needs this seat." Julian offered a slick, practiced smirk, adjusting his silk bow tie. "Don't make a scene, Alex. It's an executive decision. The firm needs a fresh, vibrant public face for the shareholders tonight. You belong behind a computer screen, not in the spotlight." I almost laughed at how pathetic they looked. Julian had been leeching off Serena's influence for 6 months, framing himself as a strategy consultant while contributing precisely nothing to our bottom line. Serena, blinded by vanity, swallowed every lie he fed her. "This is the Chief Technology Officer's designated seat, Serena," I said calmly, setting my water down with a soft clink. "It is reserved for equity holders who actually generate revenue." Serena's face flushed red. "I am the Chief Executive Officer of this company, Alex. What I say goes. Julian brings vision to Vance Avery. You bring code. Know your place." "Vision?" I glanced at Julian, letting a cold smile touch my lips. Julian couldn't code a basic Hello World script if his life depended on it. His last startup filed for bankruptcy in less than 90 days. Julian's smirk instantly vanished. "Watch your mouth, Vance. I have an Ivy League MBA, and yet you're begging for a chair at my table," I replied smoothly. "Fascinating." Serena slammed her manicured hand onto the linen tablecloth, rattling the silverware. "That's enough. Stop embarrassing me in front of our investors. Move now, or I swear to God, I will strip your executive privileges by Monday morning." The entire VIP section had gone dead silent. Dozens of high-profile investors and board members were watching, waiting for me to cave, apologize, or throw a pathetic temper tantrum. Instead, I reached inside my tailored suit jacket. Julian flinched back slightly, as if expecting a weapon. I pulled out a sleek silver fountain pen and a single folded sheet of heavy paper. I unfolded it casually on the table. "What is that?" Serena snapped, her eyes narrowing. "My executive resignation," I said, capping my pen with a crisp, audible snap. "Effective immediately." Serena froze. "Are you out of your mind? You're throwing a tantrum over a seat?" "Not at all," I said, standing up smoothly and buttoning my jacket. "You said seats are assigned by CEO authority. I say seats are earned through equity and competence. Since you value Julian's vision over the architect who built your entire technology architecture, you can have the seat. And the consequences." Julian let out a nervous chuckle, trying to recover his swagger. "He's bluffing, Serena. He won't walk away from an 8-figure salary. He's just trying to save face." "I don't bluff, Julian," I said, sliding the signed document across the table until it tapped against Serena's wine glass. "I execute." Serena looked down at the document, then back up at me, her chest heaving with irritation. "Fine. Walk out. See if I care. Vance Avery doesn't need your arrogance." "We'll find out by tomorrow morning, Serena," I murmured, leaning in slightly so only the two of them could hear. "Enjoy the seat, Julian. It's the most expensive chair you'll ever sit in." I turned on my heel and walked toward the grand exit, leaving the ballroom in total silence behind me. Behind me, Serena's sharp laugh echoed through the grand foyer of the St. Regis. "Let him walk," she called out, her voice dripping with artificial confidence. "He'll be back on his knees by tomorrow night, begging for his key card." I didn't turn around. I didn't even slow my pace. I stepped through the heavy glass doors and out into the cool Manhattan rain, the valet rushing forward with a large black umbrella. A sleek black Maybach pulled up to the curb. The rear door swung open instantly. Sitting inside was Elena Thorne, my lead corporate attorney. She adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses, her tablet already glowing in her hand. "That was fast," Elena said, her tone as dry as bone. "Did she sign it?" "She didn't need to," I replied, stepping into the leather interior and shutting out the sound of the rain. "I signed it. Effective immediately." Elena raised a sharp eyebrow. "You actually resigned at the gala?" "Serena gave my seat to Julian," I said, leaning back and resting my hands in my lap. "She told me to know my place." I decided my place wasn't at her sinking table. Elena let out a short, dark chuckle. The arrogance of that woman never ceases to amaze me. She truly thinks she runs a tech empire on her own. "She's about to find out what happens when the engine is removed from the car," I said coldly. "Execute Clause 9. Elena paused, her fingers hovering over her encrypted tablet screen. A slow, ruthless smile spread across her face. "Clause 9, she asked. "The private founder severance protocol? Alex, if I push this button, it revokes all proprietary tech licenses, isolates their core AI algorithm patents, and terminates their administrative server access. They won't even be able to run a simple database query." "Do it," I ordered smoothly. Serena built her reputation on my architecture. Let's see how well her vibrant public face codes when the servers drop dead. "Executing now," Elena murmured, tapping 3 rapid commands into her screen. License revocation broadcasted to global registries. Patent enforcement active. I checked my watch. 10:14 p.m. "How long until the core network goes dark?" I asked. "The automated transition protocol gives them a 2-hour grace period before hard shutdown," Elena replied, showing me a live system clock ticking down on her display. "By midnight, every server hosting Van Savory's software suite will lock down tightly. To the outside world, it will look like a total network collapse." "Perfect," I said, looking out the tinted window as the Manhattan skyline blurred past. "Serena thinks I threw a temper tantrum. She thinks I'll call her in 24 hours begging for forgiveness. She's currently hosting an after-party in the VIP lounge," Elena said, glancing at a private message thread on her phone. "Julian is popping champagne, telling board members he's taking over the chief technology officer role starting tomorrow." "Let him celebrate," I said with a cold smirk. "A man enjoying a feast on a sinking ship is still going to drown." My personal phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. Serena's name flashed across the screen. I swiped to decline without hesitation, then flipped the device into silent mode and tossed it onto the seat beside me. "Not answering?" Elena asked. "There's nothing to discuss," I said flatly. She traded an architect for a mascot. She can deal with the structural failure on her own. "The initial legal lockouts are already hitting their secondary data centers," Elena reported, her eyes tracking incoming system alerts. "The automated security firewalls are flagging Vance Avery Global as an unauthorized user of your personal patents. The countdown to 0 has officially begun." I leaned my head back against the leather headrest, closing my eyes as a deep, unshakable calm settled over me. "Let the clock run, Elena," I murmured softly. "Midnight is going to be very loud. Vance Avery Global is entering a bolder, infinitely brighter era," Serena's voice echoed from the 85-inch wall monitor in my penthouse office. On screen, she stood behind a podium flashlit by a dozen news cameras, looking radiant in a cream blazer. Beside her, Julian adjusted his silk tie, beaming like a lottery winner. "Effective today," Serena continued dramatically, "Julian Ross takes the helm as our new chief technology officer. He brings the modern vision this company has desperately lacked." A reporter held up a microphone. "Mr. Ross, how do you respond to rumors that Alex Vance's departure leaves a massive operational void?" Julian took the mic with a smug, practiced grin. "Alex was a relic. His methods were slow, rigid, and outdated. Under my leadership, Vance Avery will double its innovation speed. We don't need dead weight holding back our future." I took a slow, quiet sip of black coffee, watching the circus unfold. "He's certainly got a big mouth," A deep voice rasped from the leather armchair across from my desk. It was Marcus Vance, senior board director and holder of 12% of our public stock. He poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, his sharp brow furrowed. "Aren't you even slightly concerned, Alex?" Marcus asked, eyeing me carefully. "He's standing on national television, gutting your reputation. The market opens in less than an hour." Concerned? I chuckled softly, setting my porcelain cup on its saucer with a delicate clink. "Marcus, a fool wearing a crown is still just a clown. Julian couldn't manage a lemon stand, let alone our neural network." "He doesn't need to code," Marcus countered, leaning forward. "He just needs to convince Wall Street that the ship isn't sinking. And right now, Serena is selling that narrative masterfully." I opened my leather desk blotter, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and slid it across the marble surface. "Read lines 4 through 12. Marcus picked up the paper, his eyes scanning the numbers. Within 3 seconds, his jaw went slack. The color drained completely from his face. Is this accurate?" Marcus stammered, his voice dropping an octave. "It's a certified patent audit," I said, leaning back in my leather chair. 80% of Vance Avery's total valuation rests on our automated trading algorithms and core infrastructure. And every single one of those patents is registered under my personal name, not the corporation's. "My God," Marcus whispered, dropping the sheet onto his lap. "Serena thinks she inherited your tech suite when you walked out." "Serena never reads the fine print," I replied, a cold smirk touching my lips. "She assumed my work was company property because we were married. She forgot I formed my personal holding entity 6 months before our wedding. If you pull those licenses," Marcus swallowed hard, "the valuation vanishes. It's a hollow shell." "It's already hollow," I corrected him smoothly. "Julian isn't taking over my role, Marcus. He's taking over a burning house with no water." I tapped a single key on my laptop. "What did you just do?" Marcus asked nervously, sitting up straight. "I just instructed Elena to blast an official cease and desist order to every major brokerage firm on Wall Street," I said, checking my gold wristwatch. 8:52 a.m. Bloomberg and Reuters will have the filing in 3 minutes. Institutional traders will know that Vance Avery no longer possesses the legal right to run its own software. Marcus stared at me in absolute shock, his scotch forgotten in his hand. "Alex, you're going to trigger a total panic before the bell rings." "I don't trigger panics, Marcus," I said, picking up my coffee cup again and looking at Julian's smiling face on the television screen. "I just enforce reality. Serena wanted a public show. I'm simply giving Wall Street the front row tickets." At precisely 9:30 a.m., the opening bell rang on the New York Stock Exchange. On my wall monitor, Vance Avery Global opened at $142 a share. 7 seconds later, the Reuters headline flashed across the bottom of the screen. "Vance Avery patent licenses revoked by founder Alex Vance." The stock price didn't just drop, it plummeted. $110, $85, $42. Within 90 minutes, $45 billion in market value simply evaporated into thin air. An 80% collapse in a single trading session. A historic, glorious freefall. My private phone chimed. I let it ring 4 times before answering, placing it on speakerphone as I leaned back in my leather chair. "Alex," Serena screamed through the speaker, her voice high-pitched and laced with pure, unadulterated panic. "What the hell is happening to our stock? Did you launch a cyber attack on us?" I took a slow sip of dark coffee. "Good morning, Serena. I see you're watching the ticker." "Fix it right now," she shrieked. "The trading floor is in total chaos. The board is threatening to fire me, the banks are freezing our credit lines, and the servers are throwing critical error codes across every department." "I warned you last night," I said, my voice dead calm. "You gave my seat away to Julian. I simply packed up my personal belongings, which include the proprietary patents that power your entire company." "You petty, bitter bastard," Serena sobbed out, sounding completely unhinged. "You're destroying my life over a seating arrangement at a gala?" "No, Serena," I replied smoothly. "I'm protecting my intellectual property. You called me dead weight. You said Julian brought vision while I brought code. Surely your new CTO can fix a minor server error. Background noise blared through her phone line. Shouting executives, blaring terminal alarms, and Julian swearing frantically in the background. Julian is trying, Serena yelled. He's in the main server room right now. Is he? I let out a dark, amused chuckle. Tell him to stop typing. He doesn't even know basic root commands. If he forces a manual reboot, he'll permanently corrupt the administrative kernel. A second later, Julian's terrified voice cut into the call. Serena, the screens just went completely black. It says administrative access denied. System locked by owner. What did he do? I almost laughed out loud. He had actually forced the reboot. Congratulations, Julian, I said, my tone dripping with icy sarcasm. You just wiped the secondary cache and triggered a hard hardware lockout. You managed to brick a $40 billion infrastructure in less than 2 hours. Truly an Ivy League performance. Alex, please, Serena begged, her fake corporate arrogance completely shattering into desperate sobs. You have to come back to the office right now. Talk to the board. Tell the press it's just a temporary technical glitch. We can fix our marriage, Alex. I'll kick Julian out of the building. Julian gasped over the line. Serena? You can't be serious. Shut up, Julian. Serena screamed at him before turning back to the phone. Alex, please. I'm begging you. Come back to headquarters. I'm afraid that's impossible, Serena, I stated coldly, picking up a silver pen and tapping it rhythmically against my desk. I am no longer an employee of Vance Avery Global. As you so eloquently pointed out last night, non-employees have no business touching your company's servers. Alex, wait. Enjoy your new era, CO Avery, I said flatly. I ended the call, set my phone face down, and watched the red line on the stock chart hit absolute rock bottom. My penthouse door didn't just open, it exploded inward. Serena marched in first, her emerald gala dress from last night replaced by a severe black power suit that couldn't hide her shaking hands. Julian followed, looking pale and sweaty, clutching a stack of legal documents. Behind them loomed 2 corporate security guards I recognized from headquarters. I didn't bother standing up. I remained seated at my glass desk, casually rotating my silver fountain pen between my fingers. Get out, I said, not looking up from the lines of code scrolling on my personal monitor. You're trespassing on private property. Private property bought with my company's money. Serena shrieked, slamming her purse onto a side table. Read the deed, Serena, I murmured, finally glancing up. It's under my holding company. Founded 6 months before I met you. Try again. We don't have time for your semantic games, Vance. Julian snapped, stepping forward and throwing the documents onto my desk. The board is in full meltdown. You're going to sign this emergency patent release form right now. It grants Vance Avery temporary, irrevocable usage rights to the core algorithms. I glanced at the top page. I let out a soft, dark chuckle. Temporary? Irrevocable? Who drafted this garbage? An intern. Sign it, Serena demanded, her voice cracking. Or so help me, Alex, we will have you arrested for corporate sabotage and fraud. You deliberately crashed the market. I enforce my personal intellectual property rights. I replied smoothly, picking up the document and tearing it slowly in half, the sound amplified in the silent room. There is no fraud. Only poor foresight on your part, CEO Avery. Julian took a step toward me, trying to look imposing. Listen to me, you arrogant relic. We will sue you into bankruptcy. We will tie you up in litigation for the next 20 years. By the time we're done, you won't be able to afford a cup of coffee. 20 years? I raised a sarcastic eyebrow. Vance Avery won't survive 20 hours without my technology suite. Your entire operational cash flow has already been frozen by creditor banks. You can't even afford to pay the electricity bill for the server room, let alone retain white shoe legal counsel. Julian stammered, looking toward the security guards for support. That's confidential information. I designed the banking integrations, Julian, I said, leaning back in my chair. I can see your cash-on-hand metrics in real time. You're bleeding out. I turned my cold gaze to the guards. These two don't have any jurisdiction here. If they take one more step toward me, My personal detail downstairs will have them detained for felony home invasion. Decide if a bankrupt CEO's orders are worth a prison record. The guards looked at each other, hesitated, and simultaneously took a step backward toward the exit. Get back here, Serena ordered them, but they ignored her. She spun back to me, her eyes brimming with manipulative tears. She dropped her voice to a soft, trembling whisper. Alex, baby, please. Don't do this to us. Think of our marriage. Everything we built. We're husband and wife, Alex. I love you. I was just stressed about the gala. I didn't mean any of it. Marriage? I almost laughed. Built? I built a tech empire. You built a social media following using my money. You don't love me, Serena. You love the Alex Vance, CTO title that allowed you to play pretend CEO. How can you be so cold? She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. After everything I've given you. You didn't give me anything, I stated flatly. I opened a desk drawer and pulled out a heavy, sealed manila envelope. I dropped it onto the desk with a heavy thud, right over Julian's discarded papers. What is this? Serena asked, peeking through her fingers. The reality check, I murmured. Inside, you'll find clause-by-clause divorce papers. Effective immediately. Divorce? She gasped, wiping her eyes instantly. You bastard. You're divorcing me when my company is in free fall. And underneath those papers, I continued smoothly, is a full forensic audit of your personal spending over the last 3 years. Every designer bag, every European vacation you took with Julian, every penny you spent from the corporate credit lines. Serena froze, her face turning ghostly pale. How? You think your fake profits funded that lifestyle? I asked, dropping the sarcastic smirk for a tone of pure, icy fact. Read the audit, Serena. Look at the ledger transfers. Vance Avery Global was breaking even on actual revenue. Your entire lavish existence was funded directly by my personal dividend pools. I paid for your penthouse. I paid for your food. I even paid for that velvet suit Julian is wearing. Serena stared at the envelope as if it contained a poisonous snake. Julian took a step back, looking toward the door again. You're a leech, Serena, I said, picking up my pen again, and I've officially cut off the blood supply. Sign the divorce papers, or Elena will forward that audit to the SEC. I wonder how vibrant your public image will look in an orange jumpsuit. She looked up at me, the horror in her eyes completely stripped of any arrogance. She was empty. She was done. Enjoy your new era, I murmured, turning my chair back toward my monitor. Marcus, show them out. They're polluting the air. The high-polished mahogany table inside Vance Avery's glass boardroom sat 16 furious board members. Serena sat at the head, desperately smoothing her silk blouse, while Julian fidgeted beside her like a guilty schoolboy. Members of the board, Serena began, her voice quivering with forced dramatic flair. This stock crash is a calculated criminal act of domestic terrorism by my ex-husband, Alex Vance. He stole our core software overnight out of pure personal malice. He's a rogue actor, Julian chimed in, attempting to sound authoritative while wiping sweat from his forehead. He deliberately sabotaged the infrastructure. I was mid-repair when his unauthorized lockout kicked in. Quiet, Julian, Marcus warned coldly from the center table. No, I will not be quiet, Serena shouted, slamming her hand down. I hold the 30% founder proxy. As chief executive officer, I demand an immediate vote to authorize full legal prosecution against Alex. The heavy double oak doors at the end of the room swung open with a loud, sudden thud. The boardroom went dead silent. I stepped through the threshold, flanked by my attorney Elena Thorne and 4 assistants carrying leather briefcase files. Walking right beside me was a towering figure in a tailored pinstripe suit. Dominic Vance, chairman of the Global Tech Syndicate and majority shareholder representative. Serena's face lost every drop of color. Dominic? Shut your mouth, Serena, Dominic barked, his thunderous voice echoing across the room. He didn't even look at her as he took his seat at the true head of the table. You've spoken enough nonsense for a lifetime. You can't just walk in here, Julian blustered, standing up and pointing a trembling finger at us. This is an internal corporate board trial. Non-board members have no legal standing. I own 40% of the voting preference stock, you ignorant child, Dominic snapped, eyeing Julian like a bug on his shoe. Sit down before I have security throw you out the window. Julian swallowed hard and collapsed back into his chair. Alex, Dominic said, turning to me with a brief, approving nod. Present the dossier. I stepped forward, pulling a thin glass flash drive from my pocket and setting it on the polished table. Elena instantly tapped her tablet, projecting the contents onto the wall display. What you see here, I said, keeping my tone ice-cold and effortless, is a complete record of Serena Avery's gross incompetence and breach of fiduciary duty. She unilaterally replaced the chief technology officer without board consent, assigned executive clearance to an unqualified third party, and triggered a system lockout that wiped 80% of this firm's valuation. That's a lie, Serena yelled, jumping to her feet with wide, hysterical eyes. Alex set us up. He hid the patent ownership. I didn't hide anything, Serena, I replied with a dark smirk. The patent filings have been public record for 7 years. You simply never bothered to read a single corporate document during our entire marriage. Several board members scoffed loudly, shaking their heads in disgust. Pursuant to Article 4, Section 12 of the Corporate Charter, Elena announced crisp and clear. Dominic Vance hereby executes the chairman's emergency clause, stripping CO Serena Avery of her voting proxy due to clear, documented breach of fiduciary duty. You can't do that, Serena screamed, her voice cracking under the weight of utter despair. I am the face of this company. You're a liability, Marcus cut in harshly. Julian scrambled forward, reaching desperately for the desk microphone. Wait, members of the board, please. I have an operational recovery plan. If you just give me 30 days. Marcus reached over and hit a button, cutting Julian's microphone completely dead mid-sentence. Julian continued mouthing words like a fish gasping for air. We've heard enough from the mascot, Marcus declared flatly. I move for an immediate vote to terminate Serena Avery's executive contract as Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately, with cause and zero severance. Seconded. 3 board members shouted in unison. Dominic raised his hand. All in favor? 16 hands went up instantly. Not a single person abstained. Serena staggered backward, clutching the edge of the table as if she had been physically struck. No, please. Marcus, talk to them. I built this company. Alex built this company, Serena, Dominic said, standing up and buttoning his suit jacket. You just spent his money. Security is waiting downstairs to escort you and your friend off the premises. I stood beside Dominic, looking down at Serena's trembling frame with total emotional detachment. You're completely exposed to the shareholder lawsuits now, Serena, I whispered softly as I leaned over the table. Good luck with your new era. 7 days was all it took for their world to turn to ashes. At 9 a.m., federal agents surrounded Julian's luxury apartment in Soho. Elena had personally delivered our ironclad financial dossier to the SEC and the Department of Justice 48 hours prior. Between his embezzled funds from his previous startup and his panicked insider trades during Vance Avery's stock crash, Julian was facing up to 25 years in federal prison. I watched the live broadcast of him being led away in handcuffs, his face buried in his hands, before snapping the TV monitor off with my remote. Julian's bail has been denied, Elena reported smoothly, stepping into my top-floor office with a leather folder. And as for Serena, every major bank has frozen her accounts to cover the incoming shareholder class action lawsuits. She is officially destitute. Poetic justice moves remarkably fast when backed by federal indictments, I replied, adjusting my cufflinks. She's downstairs right now, Elena added, eyeing me carefully. She's been standing near the private garage entrance for 3 hours in the rain. I picked up my tailored coat. Then let's not keep her waiting. 2 minutes later, the glass doors of my private skyscraper opened into the cold Manhattan downpour. Marcus held a large black umbrella over my head, while 2 stone-faced security guards formed a tight perimeter around me. Stepping out toward my waiting Maybach, I saw her. Serena stood in the torrential rain, her expensive coat soaked through, her hair plastered messily against her pale face. The arrogant CEO who had humiliated me at the gala looked like a ghost. Her designer heels were ruined, and her hands trembled violently as she saw me approach. "Alex!" she shrieked, breaking into a desperate stumble toward me. My security guards instantly stepped forward, intercepting her 5 feet away. She collapsed forward onto her knees right on the slick pavement, water splashing over her legs. "Alex, please!" she sobbed hysterically, wiping rain and tears from her face. "Please, just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking for." I stopped, looking down at her from beneath Marcus's umbrella. My expression remained completely flat. "You have 30 seconds, Serena," I said, my voice cutting through the sound of the storm with cold precision. "Make it count." "Julian was arrested," she wailed, clutching her hands against her chest in frantic desperation. "The feds took everything. The board stripped my shares. My landlord evicted me this morning, and the banks locked my credit cards. I have nowhere to go, Alex. I don't even have money for a hotel." "Fascinating," I replied smoothly. "And how is any of that my concern?" "I'm your wife," she screamed out, her voice cracking painfully. "You were my wife," I corrected her, pulling a sleek pen from my jacket and tapping it against my palm. "The court finalized our emergency severance order yesterday. You are legally a stranger to me. How can you be so heartless?" Serena wept, reaching her trembling, muddy hands toward my polished leather shoes. "I made a mistake. I was stupid. I let Julian manipulate me. But we build a life together, Alex. How can you stand there and watch me drown without feeling a single thing?" I took a slow, deliberate step back, avoiding her reaching fingers. I looked into her bloodshot, terrified eyes with absolute emotional detachment. "Do you remember what you told me at the St. Regis Gala when you demanded I vacate my seat?" I asked her, my tone dropping to an icy whisper. Serena froze, her mouth trembling, unable to form a word. "You told me that executive decisions are based on value and competence, not emotion," I reminded her sharp and clear. "You said I brought no value to your table. Well, Serena, looking at your financial balance sheet today, you bring 0 equity, 0 value, and a mountain of legal liability." "Alex," she whimpered, her tears washing away in the rain. "I am simply making a logical business decision," I stated coldly. "And from a business perspective, you are a completely bankrupt asset." I turned my back on her without a second glance. "Alex, don't leave me." "Alex," her shrill, hysterical screams echoed off the wet concrete buildings as Marcus opened the door to my Maybach. I stepped inside the quiet, leather-scented warmth of the cabin, allowing the heavy door to shut with a solid, satisfying thud, permanently locking out the sound of her ruin. 3 months can feel like an eternity to a dying company. To me, it was just enough time to execute a total market acquisition. Standing on the top-floor helipad of my new 90-story tower, I adjusted my watch as the private helicopter blades chopped through the cool morning air. Beside me, Elena held a thick leather binder, while Dominic stood with his hands resting calmly on his silver-headed cane. "The public rebranding was a complete success, Alex," Elena reported, her voice clear over the engine hum. "Vance Apex Syndicate opened 20% higher than our initial projection this morning." "Naturally," I said smoothly, turning my head toward her. "When you strip out incompetent executive bloated weight and replace it with proprietary, unhackable neural architecture, Wall Street tends to pay attention." Dominic let out a hearty laugh. "You didn't just acquire your old company back, Alex. You obliterated the rotting legacy and rebuilt a monopoly." "I simply optimized the ecosystem," I replied with a sharp smirk. "Sentimental baggage is a tax on growth. I eliminated the liability." Elena opened the binder, pulling out a single sheet of paper stamped with red ink. "This is the final liquidation report for Serena Avery's remaining personal holdings. Her luxury penthouse, her sports cars, and her remaining equity stakes were auctioned off at noon today to cover the outstanding SEC fines." I took the document from her hands. "And the total recovery figure? 12 cents on the dollar," Elena answered cleanly. "She is left with absolute zero. Her lawyer attempted to file for hardship relief this morning, but the judge threw it out based on our fraud evidence. I glanced down at the paper, letting out a dark, amused chuckle. 12 cents. That's roughly 11 cents, more than her operational advice was ever worth. Julian's trial starts next week, by the way, Dominic added, stepping up beside me and looking out over the Manhattan skyline. His legal team is trying to secure a plea deal, but the federal prosecutor isn't budging. He's looking at 20 years minimum. He wanted my CTO title, I said flatly, pulling my silver pen from my breast pocket. Now he gets to enjoy a federal cell number instead. A fair trade for an Ivy League pretender. I pressed the pen to the bottom of the liquidation decree, signing my name with a swift, decisive flourish before capping the pen with a satisfying click. I handed the document back to Elena. That officially closes her chapter, Elena said, closing the binder. Vance Avery Global is legally dead. Only Vance Apex Syndicate remains. She thought a seating arrangement at a gala could strip my life's work away from me. I murmured, watching the ink dry on the page. She mistook my silence for weakness and my loyalty for submission. She forgot a fundamental rule of engineering. Dominic raised an eyebrow. Which rule is that, nephew? The creator always holds the master key, I said, my voice dripping with cold, unshakable authority. They tried to stage a coup against the brain of the enterprise. They ended up starving themselves to death. So, what's the next move, CEO Vance? Elena asked with a professional smile. Global expansion, I replied without hesitation. We launch the European Node Network at market open tomorrow. I have no intention of leaving room for competitors to breathe. Spoken like a true sovereign, Dominic approved, clapping a heavy hand onto my shoulder. Go take Europe. The helicopter pilot signaled from the cockpit that we were cleared for departure. Marcus held the cabin door open, waiting for my signal. I paused at the edge of the helipad, looking down at the city grid below. 3 months ago, Serena and Julian thought they had humiliated me in front of the elite. Instead, their pathetic betrayal became the ultimate catalyst for my total corporate domination. They gave me the legal cause to purge the dead weight and claim 100% of the kingdom. I stepped into the quiet, leather-lined cabin of the helicopter. Ready for departure, Mr. Vance? Marcus asked, preparing to slide the door shut. Lift off, Marcus. I ordered smoothly, leaning back into the leather seat as the floor beneath me rose smoothly into the sky. The future doesn't wait for bankrupt assets.